If you are wanting to connect to a life that may feel far away from the life that you're living, that you have this dream life planted in your heart and in your mind, then this podcast is for you. This isn't luck. Nothing about my life is luck. It is intention. It is a choice. It is the devotion to have the courage to continue to step into who I am.
And again, there's a series of events before that where I just kept getting the messages from the divine, just saying there's a little more to life than this. And after that, I started doing more meditation and yoga, and I did have another downfall. I started praying more intently. I started just choosing joy, and that was the beginning.
Thank you for tuning into the Embodied Mother podcast. I am your host, Jacqueline Page. Join me as I share my stories of my own experiences of moving through the threshold of motherhood and the wisdom that I have developed along the way. It is my hope that this is a space where mothers will walk away feeling empowered to embrace and nurture themselves and to feel grounded in their role as mother. Together, let's build the skills that will help you step into your sovereignty as mother and be the light and the pillar for your family. I can't wait to journey together.
Welcome, everybody. If you are wanting to connect to a life that may feel far away from the life that you're living, that you have this dream life planted in your heart and in your mind, then this podcast is for you. We're going to be talking about living on purpose. Welcome to the Embodied Mother podcast. I'm your host, Jacqueline Page, and I am so excited for our guest and honored to have Dodge Feeler. Welcome, Dodge.
Thank you, Jacqueline. It's great to see you. Appreciate you allowing me to be here.
Yes, I felt like this conversation was so perfect for how you have curated your life, and not just your life but your business, and just seeing the evolution of you stepping into your divine self, for you to live with intentionality. And I know that has come with a lot of intentionality. And really, I think this conversation stemmed for me when someone was talking to me and they're like, "Oh, you're so lucky that your husband does X, Y, and Z." And that really brought a lot of curiosity. And I was like, you know what? Wait a minute. This isn't luck. Nothing about my life is luck. It is intention. It is a
Mm.
choice. It is the
Yep.
devotion to have the courage to continue to step into who I am. And so I'm just so excited for you to dive into that conversation. But I would really love to start asking you, what was that catalytic moment for you that really changed the trajectory of your life? Maybe it was a season of life or a moment that you had or just a rock bottom that really shook you to really be this catalytic to like, no, you're meant to live in this way. I'd love to hear more about that.
I would say there's probably a couple rock bottoms. It really started in the summer of two. I was married previously, and I was living out on the river, as you are familiar with, and I sort of just was okay. I was comfortable. I would spend my weekends drinking all weekend, having so much fun, and it was almost like I felt like I was set up for retirement, in my mid 30s, which is sort of hilarious to think about. And just a series of events happened where there's no way the marriage is going to survive. And I do not blame my ex. In fact, I thank her. I have nothing but love for her at this point. And it really just, she was pushing me to grow. And I would say,
Mhm.
I'm the same person I've always been. I haven't changed. You should appreciate that. And, the drinking became a massive issue for me. And I would say probably the biggest moment was I went to a wedding in which I did not allow her to come with me. And I did drink that night. And I came home just feeling the the lowest you could possibly feel. And I walked in, and there's a Christmas tree set up with no lights on. And I went and laid down by it. And I slept by the Christmas tree, by the fireplace, with no lights or anything on it. When I woke up, I just thought, this is not working. And again, there's a series of events before that where I just kept getting the messages from the divine, just saying there's a little more to life than this. And after that, I started doing more meditation and yoga, and I did have another downfall. This was right before Christmas, on New Year's. I was by myself, and I woke up that next morning and I went kayaking on the river thinking this is going to be the best day ever. And I mean, the sun was out. I saw deer, I saw birds. But I saw no beauty, and I'm someone who I've always connected to nature. It's always been like where I really hear God the clearest, and nothing. I seriously I was a shell of a human, and I went back, went to bed on January 1st, and I slept for hours, and then I woke up and I did a meditation, and suddenly just everything started changing. I started doing more yoga. I started praying more intently. I started just choosing joy. And that was the beginning. I mean, again, as life has it, there are so many struggles and tribulations that went forward there. But then I started thinking, I want to have a family. I want to do life differently. Like, I'm still very young. And what am I going to get to do the rest of my life? So that was really the beginning of it. And ever since then, every year I'm like, okay, we're gonna slow down a little bit. And I mean, everything just keeps amplifying. Although I have gotten to learn how to slow down during these, crazy times that I get to enjoy, because life is just, it's so beautiful. Every day is a new day. Thank goodness.
Yes, absolutely. Even in my own rhythm, with my children, we sing a song that we thank the day, we thank God for this day, that it's a gift. And
Hmm.
then we share our gratitudes because every day is a gift. You never know when is your last day and how did you choose to live that. But even listening to your story, I see so much of that theme of the disconnect, the shell hardening our hearts, disconnecting from our hearts. I hear so much of similarities from your story, from my own, of I had experienced so much pain growing up in various different ways that my protection, my defense mechanism was to just build layers across my
Hmm.
heart. And really that was what was inhibiting me from living the life of feeling the beauty. Like you said, life is so beautiful. There is bountiful beauty and prosperity around us. And when we're living in a space where we disconnect from our heart, it disconnects from that beauty and that joy all around us. And I also heard the shifts and the changes that you chose to make. And I really think that change, like choosing to change, one is a choice, but I think it takes a few things, but I think it takes courage. It takes courage to do something different, to step out of that comfort zone that we have
Hmm.
been perpetually living in,
Hmm.
to align and make our choices to do something differently. And one of the questions that I've actually been asking people, because I'm just so curious about their habits, because I think it's in the micro habits that we do that builds up to create bigger change. So I would love to know, and I already heard you talking about a few habits that you have, but what is one habit or ritual or rhythm that you do? If not every day, almost every day, that just fuels you. And if you don't do it, it's like, oh, I'm feeling that. I didn't do that today, and let me go and do that now. What would that be for you?
I'd say really starting the morning with my kids. I mean, honestly, I love to see the sunrise and the sunset. The way that our house is, I don't really get to see the sunrise every morning. But if I don't wake up and get to, like, grab Archie and hold him tight and just think about my blessings, and just because, I mean, sometimes you'll wake up and we're all tired and grumpy, and it just starts the day wrong. Whereas, like this morning, Victoria needed to get up and get Stella ready for school. And so I was able to just be there with Archie. He's in a good mood. And I needed to get ready. I needed to prepare for the gym. I needed to do all the things to get ready for this podcast. But I was like, you know what? Time is a constraint. I'm not going to allow myself to miss out on this opportunity to connect with my son. And then, he's laughing and Stella hears it. So she comes in and we're all laughing, and of course, 20 minutes later, I'm a little bit frustrated because I'm not ready as quick as I can be. But I just thought, you know what? When I'm 80 years old, I am not going to care that I got to the gym a little later than I wanted to. I'm going to be thinking about those moments, seeing my son laugh and my sweet girl just cuddling with us. Those are the moments that you cannot, there's no amount of money or trips or anything else you can do to replace that.
Yeah, I love that. I think the way that we start our day just sets us up for success. And
Hmm.
like you said, it was a choice to get into the constraint of the lack and the scarcity of time not being on your side. And it's funny that you said that, because even with all of my intentionality and presence, I felt the same way. when I feel like there's something on my timeline. I don't know what it is about like the femininity. I love to flow with things. I love to be fluid, but there's also structure. There's this podcast at a
Mhm.
certain time, and I found myself feeling rushed. And it was the same thing. I'm like, wait a minute. That's my own mental story that I have to do something in a certain way rather
Mhm.
than just be. And it's, it is a choice. All of these habits, these attitudes, they're choices that I feel like really build up to how we are going to feel, not only in our minds, but in our bodies. And then our families feel that. You talk about you have your two kids and your wife, and they feel that when you are, tense and stressed. You feel it as a woman. Like I feel that so deeply when my husband is maybe just having an off moment. I'm like, ooh, I feel that to the core of who I am.
Yeah.
And so I loved hearing your reframe in that of, you know what? No, I want to appreciate this moment with my children, with this beautiful laughter because, they're only young. You only have this day once. And I love hearing the presence that you're able to cultivate within that. I once heard someone say, you should be willing to impress two people, your 5-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. And I love how you said that. If I'm 80, I'm going to look back at these moments, not
Mhm.
getting to the gym on time, not, the schedule that dictates my day, but those
Mhm.
moments of presence. And she was actually giving an experience of a meditation of if you woke up as 80 years old and you got to wake up and be yourself today, how would you see your day? And it just transforms who you are.
It changes everything. There are even times where I'm like, I'm not saving enough money for retirement, for
Mm,
when I'm 80. When I'm 80, that's going to be that golden age where I'm reflecting that, that is actually the time to be thinking about the past. Right now, we are supposed to be focusing on the now, learning from the past, and, obviously trust and faith in the future. But if we spend all of our time in the future, anxiety. If I spend all my time thinking about the stupid things I've done, I'm depressed. So, it's an ongoing battle of balancing all that out. When I was frustrated that I was not ready, Victoria saw that, and I really went back to her and said, the funny thing is, I actually had the best morning. I just in that one moment was frustrated that I'm not getting out the door, and then I let that go, and it's been a perfect morning. Everything laid itself out perfectly. And there's something you mentioned about the love of flow and then needing structure. I often think of femininity as the flow of the river, and then the masculine is going to be the structure, the walls of the bed of the river. And we all have that inside of ourselves.
mhm.
I'm a pretty creative person, and I sometimes have struggled in the past and ongoingly of making sure I have a structured schedule, but also having that place of flow. So, because you never know what magical things are going to happen. I mean, it's hilarious. I go to a coffee shop, I meet the most amazing humans, or I set some time where I'm going to sit outside, and I get to watch, the cardinals, or I get to see a hawk fly by. And if you miss those moments because you have so many, set meetings and so many things, life flies by. You built a business, you have, a really big bank account, but you spent all that time in meetings and doing things that just they don't fulfill you. They don't give you anything to put your teeth into.
Yeah. Yeah. And even not even in the busyness, which I feel like being so overly busy is a form of avoidance of really seeing ourselves. And I think that, but also like how you mentioned in the beginning of your story, even when you were outside, it was like, I'm hearing the birds, I'm feeling the sun, and yet I'm not connecting to it. And I think that's when we're not connected to ourselves, which is really connecting to our divine creator who created
Mhm.
us. And we can be on this beautiful walk and miss that hummingbird that just flew by. Or we
Yeah.
can be on a walk and miss the rabbit with its little babies in the forest.
Mhm.
It's right next to us. I think it really is anchoring into the presence. And whatever that presence is, sometimes I feel nervous to do things that I've never done before. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to allow myself to feel nervous. I'm going
Mhm.
to allow myself to actually be okay with how I'm feeling. And even just that presence of not avoiding my discomfort. And I think that that's kind of where I've begun to build my trust muscle is being okay, being uncomfortable. What are some things that you feel like you've connected to that has brought you out of your comfort zone?
I mean, I honestly don't know that I've been fully comfortable since going through that divorce. The first time I really started feeling it was I could not imagine telling everyone I failed. I failed my
Mm.
marriage. You know, me. She had her part. It was me though. And, I hope it's okay that I mentioned like one day I was just deeply reflecting. Like I feel like sometimes I'm just like this fool where I'm not really like I deeply reflect. And sometimes it's even to my detriment. But I was on the river and I actually done some mushrooms and it was pretty profound. I kind of just saw this little boy because I asked myself, why am I so angry? Because I was constantly being told during that time I needed anger management and everything else. And suddenly I was like, why am I so angry? Like, that is a legitimate question. And I just see this little boy and I realize it's not anger, it's sadness. And I
Mm.
see that little boy and I'm just like, I'm pretty sure this, 30-plus-year-old man can forgive that little boy. I can hold that for him now. And that's sort of a side note, but then I was just thinking, like, what is this weird feeling? Why am I feeling this anxiety right now, imagining a life outside of what is happening in this moment? And I realized, oh, that's being uncomfortable. You've been comfortable for these years. Things just, they keep working out. And I just realized it's time to get uncomfortable, Dodge. And
Mm.
shortly after that, I heard a strange voice in my head say, when I'm just like, I'm in it. I'm just deep in these feelings. And it was sort of like, you should kill yourself. You should let this life go. And that really hit me because I immediately responded, no, I love life. I love my life. And I don't want to die. And it quickly shifted to, well, then it's time to die to this current life and let's see what we can create out of this. Let's co-create with the creator. And I mean that term co-creating with the creator, that's kind of come in more recent years, but I've realized just it was just the start of something beautiful that has happened and it's been an ongoing journey ever since. So I made that a little longer than I meant to, but
No,
it
I love it.
really I reflect back on that journey so many times because I really don't know. I don't even know if I'd be alive at this point if I did not shift from what I was doing back then.
Yeah. One, I appreciate that share, that honesty of, of the rock bottom that you really were at and how it was like, wait, no, I want different. I want to step out of
Mhm.
this. And I really do believe that when we start to connect to our authentic self, we realize these layers that we have just like built on ourselves of stories, belief systems, that we created for ourselves, that culture
Mhm.
taught us, that family taught us, but they're really just stories. And like you said, it's a series of letting those parts of ourselves die off to really find our truest self, and it can feel uncomfortable. I think because we've lived a life that has, avoided, we've created so many mechanisms to our avoidance. Everyone has their own vice of what that looks like. But really, I think it's because it can just feel so confronting
Yeah.
to realize, wait, I'm living a life that doesn't feel connected to who I am. I'm realizing I'm living a life that I don't want to be living anymore. And
Mhm.
that can feel scary to really just acknowledge that. I had those same feelings of I don't want to be living this life. And it wasn't that I wanted, like you said, I don't want to die, but I'm realizing I don't want to live this anymore.
Mhm.
And it's a choice to come out of that. And it's a series of deconstruction of letting that go, of letting those parts of ourselves die off. And at first I felt like it felt very dramatic for me. Like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, like I'm going through this death. Really, for me, it was birth. Like that was the biggest portal and initiation for me to just let my grief come to the surface. And I was like, holy, I don't know how to hold this. I don't know how to
Yeah.
see this. I don't
Yeah.
know how to feel this. We're not taught how to cope with these emotions that we just suppress down. And
Mhm.
it was, yeah, it was, a journey of seeing myself, seeing this life that I chose, that I created, because, we're creators of our own life, make those choices and, allowing that to die off. And I'm curious, what are, besides, like you mentioned, bringing your presence, and your rhythms of your morning, what are some things that else that you feel like not just you personally, but anyone listening to this that would be steps into starting to see themselves?
I think the biggest one is to learn to be okay not doing anything and sitting with yourself. Put your
Mm.
phone away, learning to just hear that mental chatter because, I mean, you quickly learn the voices that are inside your head are typically way harsher than anything you find outside of yourself. And I mean, that really, it's getting to, you know, really get to know yourself and even just how to shift those voices. And I mean, I think that's the biggest start. You can read, you can, watch all the masterminds, you can learn about mindset. But if you still have a voice telling you that you're not good enough, and then you're never going to be able to do that, and all the reasons why you're going to fail, it's not going to matter. I mean, you can watch Alex Hormozy, who's made, I think he's a billionaire by this point. I mean, you can watch it all day, but if the voice inside of you is saying you can't do that, you're not good enough, think of all the things you've done. What if they find out who you really are? But you know what? How about you become someone that you are okay with people finding out who you are? You can't live in the past of your mistakes. You get to be present and look to the future. Like, what do I get to create now? How do I get to help out, humanity? I don't think we're here to save the world individually. You can quickly get the savior complex and take yourself way off track. But I mean, the start is just how do I fill my own cup? How do I take care of my children and my wife? And then you branch out from there of how do I get to make a positive influence on maybe it's your neighbor, I read constantly about how really our nervous systems are set to know about 150 people, which is not even a possibility in this day and age. But when you realize that it's how do you help your next door neighbor? Instead of like, of course, going international with a business or something else is great, but how do you locally help that person? Which you and I spend a lot of time talking about community.
Yeah.
But I think that's really where I think the best start is learning, write it out, write those things out of what's bothering you. And then you start realizing, well, this person hurt me. I took that, and so I hurt this person. And so then I write out, I've done so many letters. I forgive you for these things. And then I've written to the people where it doesn't make sense to personally go to them and apologize. And I write out, I am sorry for these things. And then, it's even just like consistently learning to let them go, release them. And obviously that's kind of the letting go and surrendering of it all.
Yeah. And I think even like you said, the sitting with yourself, because then you start to realize my pain has caused pain on others.
Yeah.
And having to sit with that really and acknowledge that. It's funny because right now for me, my theme is forgiveness. I'm
Mhm.
reading two different books, and both of them at the same exact time talk about forgiveness, but not just forgiving others, but forgiving yourself. And I think that in order to forgive ourselves, we have to be almost like radically honest with ourselves for the mistakes that we have made and
Yeah.
how we have hurt others. And I was actually on my morning walk to go and watch the sunrise. Even though it's cloudy, I still get my walk in to like feel that just the light of the world come in and the darkness fall away.
Hmm.
And I just like heard these two specific moments in my marriage early on that were like these were catalytic moments that brought some pain that have like transpired into how we used to operate. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to forgive myself, but I need to apologize to my husband for
Hmm.
these. And I came back from my walk and I was like, do you have a moment? He's like, yes. He's like getting ready to walk out the door. And I was like, I just need to like apologize to you. And he's like, okay, like this is not in my normal behavior to just be like, I'm going to apologize to you.
Hmm.
But it felt so important. It felt so important for me to acknowledge those parts. And he was like, that happened. I don't even remember that. But for whatever reason, it came up for me to
Hmm.
bring healing to, to just love on my younger self for those moments of living in a way that felt so closed off to my heart.
Yeah.
But I think that like you hit the nail on the head is like one, sitting with yourself, but two, like bringing that forgiveness and that compassion, not just for yourself, for others. And, it doesn't matter what someone else did to you. When you hold on to bitterness and resentment and anger, no one else is feeling that but you. that's not
Mhm.
affecting anyone else but you. And I love hearing how you have like your own practice of forgiveness, even if it's like not someone that, like you said, would make sense to connect to apologize, but you found your way to bring that forgiveness. Because I think that it just feels like weight just lifting off shoulders when you bring forgiveness for yourself and others.
I totally agree. I often will talk to my daughter about the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I don't know if you're familiar with Neville Goddard. He's he's someone who's more of like a Christian mystic that looks at the Bible, but he was talking about how yes, you want to do that, but it's even just what you're thinking towards others, like
Mm,
wishing them ill, which not something I really do, but sometimes you're like, I want to do better than them or whatever. But you have to also think of it as coming back around there. Like, I mean, obviously, when I think of your family, I'm thinking of wishing you guys prosperity and abundance and love and joy. And the funny thing is that what he said is if they don't receive those
mm,
prayers, it's going to come back to you. So if you're praying like in a competitive way, I hope they fail,
uh,
that's coming back around you. And it was profound for me because then after I said, he said, if we all can change the way we think in that way, that can actually become heaven on earth. Obviously, in a very different sense, but
mhm.
it really hit the nail on the head when I was thinking about living with a purpose because, even in my business, I have plenty of people that you would want to call competition, but I often have to think there's also plenty of fish in the sea, and the people that are supposed to be with me are going to find themselves. So, yes, I'm going to wish nothing but prosperity and abundance and love on whoever is also trying to build a business in a similar way. And the same thing with the families, like it really is crazy to me when people want to be competitive in terms of even just, clothes and everything else. It's like I'm on my own trajectory here. I
Yes.
am just doing my very best with what I have, and I wish nothing but the best and the dreams of other families and individuals. I hope that they get to do that as long as it is for the betterment of humanity
Mhm.
and the
I love hearing that. I love hearing how you are even, taking your principles, but verbalizing that to your children and how they show up with others and around others. I think that's so important to begin to plant that seed even as they're so young because, being around peers and that peer pressure of can really, get to you to make choices that maybe don't align with your values of how you hold yourself. But I think that is so important, not just our words, how we treat others, but how we even think about them. That makes so much sense even when I have really just begun to dive into like how our belief system about ourselves is creating our reality. But then
Mhm.
our belief and what we are, projecting out into someone else, that's also going to come back to us. I'm even hearing the theme of like feeling so secure in yourself, letting go what others think about you. And not in a way where I still deeply value like what my husband, his opinion about the things that I'm doing or my family and friends. But there's just this layer that I recognized. I went to an engagement party on Friday and I went by myself because all of my babysitters were there, which was my family. And
Yeah.
so Jeremy stayed home with our kids and I walked in and I was like, "You know what? A few years ago, past me would have been like so anxious to go walking by myself. What am I going to wear? What am I going to say? Who am I going to hang out with? Are they going to be there yet when I arrive?" Like, those are the questions that used to just percolate in my mind, which honestly just creates more like angst and anxiety, walking into something new. And I was like, I was reflecting, I was telling him, I was actually excited to go to this party and practice my
Mhm.
my communication skills with people that I don't know, or even deepen with the people that I do know. And it was such a narrative shift for me to be like, whoa, I used to feel so nervous to go somewhere that one time I even showed up somewhere by myself. I called my husband. I was so uncomfortable that I went and picked him and my son up to come back with me. So I didn't have to be by myself.
Yeah.
And I was just reflecting on that. So much of it has the inner work that I'm doing to let go of the layers has actually been building my inner world of
Mhm.
trusting, of the self confidence, and just the belief systems that I hold about myself. And I think that, this conversation has really been revolving around the belief systems, not only that we hold for ourselves, but like our world around us. And I loved hearing you reflect that back.
I think. You and I are always interesting, like similar journey, but obviously very different. Where obviously, don't let me say what you've been doing, but for me, I spent a number of years while we were building our family. I kind of was hiding out. I mean, I was not. We were at the river house. We were not seeing many people. I was
Mhm.
spending a lot of time just finding my own center. And then now there's this calling to start networking and start building and getting to know more people. And now's the opportunity where we get to see or do we trust ourselves? Have we worked on that inner, that inner voice and the trust in the God and what the plan is to go out and stay calm, stay regulated, and be able to be ourselves around other humans, no matter
Mhm.
what that cost is. Being okay with y'all are weird because we are weird, and I love that part. I want to be myself. I want you to be myself, like you to be yourself. I also think that's why you and I always just hit it off. We've always hit it off, and I mean, it's a very different journey because you know I finally allowed myself to watch the Spurs, but I kind of had to let go of most of my little
Mhm.
vices for years now, and so it became hard to relate to a lot of people. And now it's learning how do you get to still relate with the world around you, but remember you're in the world, you're not of it.
Mm. Yeah, I can, yeah, I feel that so deeply in my own journey of when I was like deconditioning and just feeling not in rapport with everyone around me. And at first I created the story like I'm so alone, there's no one that gets me. But that was also a story that I
Yeah,
created, right?
yeah.
Because I would go to friends functions or family functions and feel so ostracized, but I think that was my own projection of like I'm separating myself from how I used to operate, which was in rapport with everyone around me. And that I also have noticed that shift is like you said, how can I still connect to the people that I do love and want to have, connection with also being authentically myself. And I think that is because I'm so secure in myself that we can be so different and I can hold
Mhm.
that tension because there's a love that bonds us together. And I think that being more heart-centered and opening my heart, I've been able to connect to that love, that piece of connection that does draw us together, that we are here in relationship for a reason.
Mhm.
And you can live your life and have your truths, and I can live my life and have my truths, and they both be okay, and they're both true in our own worlds.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I love how you brought that piece in because it really was a deconstruction of going inward, but not just for myself. I noticed our family unit do the same thing. And even in homeschooling, there was one year where I was like, we're dropping all of our co ops. It feels too busy. I don't feel this deep
Mhm.
connection. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm homeschooling. This is our socialization. And I was like, and yet I know this is what we're meant to do. And because I let go of the things that didn't relate and connect to how I was wanting, so much more intimacy in the relationships we've created with our homeschool co-op or rhythm of being at the river more, being around nature
Mhm.
more, has cultivated more in alignment with our values. And so it really is the quieting to step back out and see how we interact with the world in a
Mhm.
more heart open secure way. And so I love that you brought that up. And I'm just so curious about how someone that's maybe hearing this and is like, wow, I'm really noticing that my habits are just not aligning with like where I'm wanting to go. Like, what is some structure that you could, like you said already, sitting with yourself, but like what else could they be doing to be like, I want to connect to this dream life that I have?
I love to start with, get out into some sunshine, preferably by water, put your feet in the dirt, and allow yourself to actually use your imagination of how good could it get? What could I do differently? What is it possible that I can create? And and even writing some of that down, like creating a real vision for your life. And then obviously if you have a family, you get to eventually like speak with your significant other about it and even your kids, because obviously if you're going to create a life that you love, you want everyone to be in on it. But it's definitely like it's allowing yourself to have an imagination again because, as the world tells you who you are and what you're doing, slowly your imagination gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I mean, I've had times where before I sort of made a shift, someone would say, "Hey, Dodge, tell me a story." And I'd be like, I haven't read a fictional novel in forever. I've been reading studies and manuals for the last few years. Like my imagination is lacking at this point. But it is wild the way connecting to yourself, getting into nature, connecting with your family, and start like imagining what could be a little bit different here, and then just sort of being even relentless about it and dipping again into, you have to have just deep, deep trust and knowing that it is going to work itself out. And a lot of time you start thinking back, like, obviously I've had hardships, I've had struggles along the way, but it typically works out. Things usually work out for the betterment, when you choose to trust and just drop in to see like what is really present here.
Mm. Mhm. I love that you said that. I honestly believe that having kids has allowed me to reawaken so much of
Mhm,
my own imagination, inner child joy. Like I was just living life so serious and structured. I'm
mhm.
like, there was no playfulness, none. And it's interesting because I was actually reflecting on the things that I was wanting to do. My son has been a catalyst for me to step back into that because we started to, connect more to the land behind our house. We have this beautiful
Mhm,
4 mile trail and this loop, and there's just so much back there. And he started playing survival games. He's like, we're gonna go and survive off the land. And this game has turned into us actually getting to learn the plants behind our house.
love
And there's
that.
so much medicinal plants back there, edible plants, and
Mhm,
it's it's funny because his imagination, his play brought into like my desire of like I remember for years we would be with friends and they would know a certain plant. I'm like, "Oh man, I wish I knew these plants like that." And
mhm,
I just kept wishing and wishing, and it was like wishing without action. I wasn't taking action on those things. And so I
mhm.
love how you said to just allow that imagination to come true, to come alive, and to dream big. And we were talking about as a family our own like visions. I was like, you know what? One day I came home from church and I was like, I'm so lit up about this message of us dreaming small. Like God wants so much for us. And so we
Mhm.
all just spoke out loud the things that we were wanting. And that was only, I don't know, a month or two ago. And
Yeah.
even from just speaking it, there has been so much that has already transpired and come true. And so I took it a step further. I was like, for my birthday, I want all of us to sit down and like make a vision board together. Like, let's bring
Mm,
this into like vision. So we spoke it. Now let's actually have a visual that we can like anchor into. And it's just been so fun to dream. And I realized that our
amazing.
dreams they were really small and we were like trying to dream around our like current reality and I was like, I think we
Mhm,
got it all wrong. We got to
mhm,
let this reality go. We got to dream bigger
mhm,
and
mhm.
outside of it. And I love hearing you connect into that part because I think we're meant to dream so much bigger than we're allowing ourselves. I think that our own, like you said, our own minds like places parameters. And I recognized one time, I'm like, there's infinite love, infinite money, infinite beauty, prosperity,
Mhm,
joy. It's infinite. And it was my own heart that was like creating these barriers around it. And I was like,
mhm.
actually, my husband has so much love to give me, to our children, to his parents, to his friends, that I was the one like in my lack and scarcity of like, it's not enough. I need more. Or I'm like, wow, I just saw this like this reality just like shatter before me like in a moment. I'm like, wow, I was creating that reality. And like you said, it's taken time of self-reflection, of
Mhm.
coming into myself to be very honest with how I'm choosing to live my life, the habits that I'm creating. And I would love to hear what are other some habits that you feel like these are my like non-negotiables. I heard like your morning routine, getting out in sun. Are there any others that you're like, oh, these people need to hear about these habits?
So, in previous life, I was a hair restoration surgeon. I worked in the ICU, so I got used to working really, really long hours. And then kind of when I went through that initial transformation, suddenly I started singing more and I started hearing like sing words that I thought were beautiful. And I think it's finding some passion and some hobbies that have nothing to do with what you normally do. I mean, I normally now I actually set part time, usually Friday mornings, where I might be, banging a drum. I may be writing on my whiteboard. Like I have a song that I wrote. It's, like I often think like I have this divine spark inside of me that helps me create that, and it's not always for anybody else. I'm not exactly being begged to go sing on a stage somewhere, but I get to sing the songs to my children and I watch them, you know, fall asleep to them. And then, like not long ago, Stella was bullied a little bit and I made a lullaby for Archie. It's about, letting your voice be heard and, that you are whole and complete and you're loved and loved. And I was like, man, these words were made for this very exact scenario. And, we aren't all meant to just, again, be up on stages and everything. And maybe we are, but it's whatever you have to do to make money, that is great. And you have to put time into that. We get to like that is a reframe that I think every single human should do. But find things that you love outside of that. And that's, again, that happened to me individually. And then not long after I met Stella. And next thing I know, I'm getting to paint sunsets and sunrises and beaches. And yeah, like embracing art because even if you think you're not good at it, it is so important for your mental health to do that.
It is. I can attest to that wholeheartedly. I used to think that when I would try to like paint or create that, not that I thought I was very rigid. Like all of
Hmm.
my art was very like straight lines. I didn't know how to like paint outside the box. I was
Hmm.
so far from feeling comfortable with painting outside the box to creating. And then I would just watch my children paint and they had no thought. They would just grab the paint and put it on. And I'm like, in awe. I'm like, how
Uh-huh.
can you do that? You don't have perfectionism that has like blanketed how you create. And I think that truthfully, getting to homeschool my children has been the biggest blessing in my life of myself reawakening those parts of myself because watching them create, watching them play, watching them imagine, they're teaching me. They're helping me
Hmm.
remember those parts of myself that I have been closed off to for so long. And like you said, singing, I used to think that I had a terrible voice. And and I think it was really because I was singing from a place that was so closed off from my heart that as I've begun to de-armor that pain, the grief, the forgiveness, feeling secure in myself, I'm able to live in a way that feels more heart-centered and more aligned into how I feel that brings harmony and joy. And my voice has evolved so significantly that I I surprised myself. I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh, that was me? That sounded really good."
Yeah.
And not just that, but others want to hear we love to read. We read so much, and sometimes we get books from the library that have like the audio with the book. And my son was like, "Can you read this to me?" And I'm like, "Why do you want me to read that? It can read it for you." And he's like, "But I want to hear your voice." And I was like,
Hmm.
that just yes. Thank you for letting me know what you needed and explaining to me, but it's so true. They want to hear
Yeah.
our voice. They don't care what we sound like. I feel like when we're singing it's so pure and
Hmm.
you can feel the love exude from us.
Hmm.
And I appreciate you bringing that into the conversation because I even had a whole podcast episode that was creativity is a basic need. I think that just like food, water, movement, sun, we need creativity.
Hmm.
It's that spark that makes us unique in who we are. And it doesn't have to look like paint on the paper. I have found creativity in the way I cook, in
Hmm.
the way that we orient our life. That has felt creative to me. I have let pieces go to bring in new pieces and like feeling like this puzzle is coming together and then we grow and then more needs to fall away. And it's just like my life has become my canvas and I am the artist getting to create this
Hmm.
masterpiece. And I think that that is how we live on purpose. All of
Hmm.
these things that have come together is how we live on purpose. So I really appreciate you you bringing that element into the conversation of, living on purpose.
Again, my brother and my father, they are both English professors. And so they do amazing work. So a story I told myself was, I'm
Mhm.
not good at those things. I just, I'm not going to do them. And then it's funny because I would say God just was sort of like, no, you have to do these things because if not, you are good. Like there's going to be mental health problems that happen. I mean, but again, like you said, you notice your voice changing over time. I've been with a voice coach for about 3 years now, and I don't get to meet with her all the time. But any time that we works, we'll get together, and she'll help me kind of craft my songs into something that I can appreciate. And it's been crazy just noticing how my voice has evolved over time. And she always says, though, anyone can learn how to sing. Like we all have a voice that, can be beautiful. Are we all going to sound like, you know, Mariah Carey or someone like that? Not necessarily, but we have something that we can personally appreciate. Because, when you're singing and you're humming, like that's actually stimulating your parasympathetic system. So, if I'm upset, I'll start humming. But even for your children, when Archie's really upset, I am not able to give him breast milk in the same way that his mother does, and so I don't have that. I don't have that I'm able to do, which is how it's supposed to be. But I can sing to him and I can hum to him, and I mean, there have been times where I'll just start audibly humming,
Mhm.
and I will feel his nervous system relax because mine is. And that's as the man, I painfully sometimes am reminded that I am kind of the nervous system of the family. And so if I'm not taking care of myself through typically some form of art, then I can't take care of anybody else.
And I don't even want to say kind of, very much so. Your
Very much
nervous
so, yeah.
system,
Sometimes, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
it especially as like a woman, how we're just so we feel with our whole body. And when my husband, is having his moments, that level of safety begins to like, oh, I can feel myself heightened just from
Yeah.
responding to him. And then also having my own responsibility around that. I'm like, okay, I have my tools now. I know how to regulate myself.
Mhm.
But it is even if he's like feeling off, it's even if like we're disconnected on a decision or a choice, or there's just some kind of element where I feel out of rapport, that sense of safety instantly gets like heightened, and I feel like my wall is just like building up. And that's just like
Yeah.
some awareness that I've had, getting to know myself deeper of I'm very much calibrated to his nervous system. And but I mean, I think it goes both ways. Like we have this symbiotic
For sure.
relationship
For sure.
where we affect one another. And I love hearing all of the habits and the tools that we can do to live on purpose. I'm just so curious, going back to the beginning of your story, do you know what was creating that resistance for you to like, step out into living this beautiful life that you live now?
You've sort of touched on it more than once. I keep almost interrupting you, but I'm like, no, let her finish. But it's the walls that I created to protect myself. I still very much am. I mean, I make a point to try to, well, I do. I move pretty much every single day unless my body is just saying, no, you need to rest. But, I was a bodybuilder, which I still do movements that are bodybuilder, but I mean, I was almost 250 pounds and I was building these walls like, I didn't want to fight necessarily, but I didn't want anybody to want to fight me. It was
Mhm.
just to protect myself. And I still see those like defense mechanisms sneaking in, but I'm very aware of them now. And I just figure, okay, learn how to let these patterns become like a superpower. But yeah, the resistance was just fear of being seen in certain ways. It's the concerns of everything outside of myself. So I just like I needed to have these walls built up. And so if I were to break all those down and show myself what's underneath all that, what's left? Are people still going to like me? I mean, I'm
Mm.
a recovering people pleaser, and I do still very much want to be able to say I'm sorry whenever I've hurt someone, but I'm not going to apologize for living and taking up space and air. And that's another thing is, you watch the news and I mean, there was like, I don't even know if it still exists, but in New York, I read about one day how they had a ticket that was actually about it was called like man spreading, or maybe it was just like they wanted to, but they wanted to ticket you if you took up too much space on the train because you're a bigger person, because you're a man. And so you read those things and you're like, it just, you become scared to talk, or even just, I mean, I am a middle-aged white guy who I very much love everybody, but when we see that stuff, you don't always know what to do with yourself because that's just that fear sneaks in.
Mm.
But then you just go back into the get to do this. I have a God-given spark inside me. I have Christ within. That means that I belong here. I'm here for a reason, and I get to create with the divinity outside of me.
I love that. I so appreciate you bringing that we are all from God. God created all of us for a reason. We're here on
Hmm.
purpose. We're here for a purpose. We all have unique gifts to bring to this world that creates this tapestry with all of us. We all have gifts to embed and to weave into this art that is life. And I love, and I want to bring us back full circle to, you have taken this living on purpose, this way of life, into a business where you get to help others create vitality through their lifestyle, through modern medicine, through ancient medicine, through
Hmm.
all of your knowledge and wisdom that you've created. I would love to just, speak about that and hear more about how you've taken your lifestyle and your knowledge and wisdom and practice and build it into a business to help others.
I, I want to say one thing about previously is
Yeah.
just when I'm saying these things, I'm not special. We all have the things I'm talking about. I always, I think, just with Epstein files and things like that, like the days of like looking up to people on a pedestal, which we're not supposed to really have other gods before us, but I'm not here to be some guru. I really just want to be someone who really embodies what I learn and the wisdom that comes through as I continue to live this life and climb the ladder. I believe in humility. I don't really love the idea of like I have authority. It's that
Mm.
I am here to be myself. But as far as, with my business, a lot of it does come back from my bodybuilding background. In the beginning, it was how do I get really big and strong? And so I just dove into reading about herbs and different supplements. And then later on, when I tore my bicep, I started studying peptides really deeply. Uh, but I've also always been very interested in longevity. And I mean, I drink raw milk. There's plenty of arguments about it, but sourdough bread. I love pastured eggs, grass-fed beef. It's everything I've done up to this point in terms of like eating real food, which I think is the most important thing is real food. And
Mhm.
then learning what are these other things that we can do to kind of fill those holes, or even just, unfortunately, our food does not have the nutrients that it used to. So we often do have to kind of do some replacing there, or even just, we don't have spring fed water that's full of minerals and everything we need. We use RO where it's depleted. So you have to figure out ways to replace that. So I'm kind of taking a big circle around, but it is a way of life. It's learning how do we fill those holes, take supplements, sticking with also ancient medicine. Before I did this, I was doing some ginseng. I also love other types of plant medicine. There's something called babanasa. I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's supposed to be very heart opening. I do notice when I take it before I go to sleep, I have very interesting dreams. So it's really just like it's going into like what are some of the older ways that we can do things and the newer tools as well. Not all peptides are the best idea. They're not very well studied. I've also witnessed in clinic and with myself how they can be extremely healing. I also think it's one of those things where if we lived in Costa Rica and we were able to get up every morning and just take care of our garden and feed the goats and everything, we probably would not need a lot of these modern day tools. So it's really just the progression of societies. It's making it where there's just more necessity to do that. But regardless, what I'm really just I've done this out of love. It started off a little bit out of anger, going through a divorce, not getting paid what I thought I should be paid, and then it's shifted to building a life that I get to live, a life that I get to love, and I want that to trickle down to my patients, to my team, to everyone around me. And yeah, I kind of look at it as a movement. As of now, it's telemedicine, but I have a much larger vision that's just slowly unfolding. Where it ends up, we don't know. I know that I have a lot of intention and prayer going towards it, but fortunately, I have a greater mind that's going to be able to see things that I can't see. So it's probably going to be, it's not about Dodge feeler either. It's about It's about the people that are involved in it. I start off as Feeler Wellness, and I realized I don't need my name on this. What if there's a day that Dodge is not even a part of it? It just gets to be something that is actually helpful to humanity and to the world.
Hmm. That's so beautiful. I think that what's so magnetizing about it is like the authenticity of how you have cultivated it and the honesty of like, well, it started as this and it evolved because like you said, it's not me. I helped bring this to the world. I helped bring this to life. I'm feeding it and I'm nourishing it for it to grow, to reach others. I so appreciate this whole conversation because I think that life has so much to offer and there's so much beauty in the world. And I know that, from me personally, like how you even spoke, when we begin to cultivate a life where we're so disconnected from that, then I really feel like we're living life halfway.
Mhm.
We're not reaching the full potential of what God created us to live for. And, I want to go back before we end this of I think fear is at the seat of a lot of that, the fear to show up, the fear to be seen, the fear to step out of our comfort zone. And, this is from the Gene Keys, but a life lived in fear is a life half lived. And I just, I want anyone hearing this to take these seeds, to take these little things that we have mentioned and start getting curious about your life. Do you love your life? Do you
Mhm.
wake up feeling joyful? Do you have joy in every day? I mean, not every moment might be joyful because, of course, we're human, but there's so much joy available in every day.
Mhm.
And that's the way that, I've gotten to cultivate, but it's also been a choice, like you said, not to pedestal other people because I know that people have reflect back to me all the time that you look like you have it all together. It must be nice the way you live. I'm like, let me be honest. I don't have it all together. Every day is a choice on how I live.
Mhm.
And getting to be home, homeschooling, going to the rivers, connecting with nature, it has been a choice of connecting to my heart's desire and creating the habits that have been able to, where I have capacity to hold these things. There was once upon a time where I didn't have capacity to home make all of our meals and homeschool and live the life that I wanted to live. And so
Yeah.
I really just hope that people, if you're listening, that you hear this and you have so much potential in you, in your life. I'm just so grateful for you, Dodge, to being here. Is there anything else that you want to like leave people with before we?
As you're speaking, the song that I just wrote, I put a line in there that says, "Life is a spring, drink it until you swell."
Hmm.
And I think it's not always beautiful. Like it's not always perfect. It's most of it's living in the mundane. It's you're in the trenches with your significant other. You're so tired by the end of the night, but you you are so fortunate that you're that tired. And so I just I don't have a lot, but I the last thing that kind of came to mind is just finding gratitude because when you do choose you want to make a life that you love, it's not easy. Like you said, like there are tons of struggles. I don't want to hide those things.
Yeah.
If you get on my Instagram, you get to see the highlight reel. I do my best to also authentically say, like, there are days I still struggle. Absolutely. There's a reason I have to keep letting go and surrendering over and over again. Yeah, just when you're in it and you're thinking you're spiraling. Is this working? Oh my gosh, I can't believe took this first step. I'm gonna fail. This is not gonna work out. Like, no, you stop, take a deep breath, hum if you need to, and find gratitude.
Yes. Yeah. What a beautiful little sequence to do. Because that's so actionable. You can do that anywhere, right? You can take a deep breath anywhere. You can come and find three things you're grateful for.
Mhm.
And those things can just help shift the energy, shift the mood. I would love to let people know where they can find you, where they can connect with you. What is your social media handles or your website?
Sure. I have my personal, which is just Dodge Feeler, and then I have the Way of Life Wellness. It's Way OLWPN, and then the website is wayolw.com.
Nice. Well, I'll be sure to link all of that in the show notes and so that people can connect with you because I'm sure that this conversation, for me personally, it's even like sparked some more,
Yeah.
just, enlivened me. So I'm sure it's going to plant the seeds. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode of choosing to live your life on purpose. I hope to see you in the next episode. Until next time, sending many blessings.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. It has truly been an honor to walk alongside you and share my journey of motherhood with you. If you feel connected with this episode, I would just so love if you could leave a rating and a review. This really helps the podcast grow so that it can reach other mothers and women along this journey. And I always love hearing your takeaways and your interactions with this podcast. So if you ever feel called to share on Instagram and social media, be sure to tag me at the.embodied.mother so I can connect with you and your takeaways from this podcast. Until next time, I'm sending you with so much love and blessings on your journey in this life.